Hello and welcome to 2D animation and interactivity. My name is David Luke. This is going to be one of three videos this week. This first video is what I'll call sort of Flash Basics. The first bit here is going to be sort of me more sort of introducing what Flash is, what Flash looks like, etc. And two other videos you're going to have are going to be two exercises. Your first animated exercises are going to be quite simple, but are going to lay down kind of the groundwork for the rest of the semester. If you haven't already, last week was really sort of about getting Flash. Hopefully you got Flash. Hopefully you didn't have any problems. I didn't see any emails with too much concern. I myself actually just updated my Flash this morning. As mentioned in the syllabus, Adobe has moved to what's called cloud computing. So we have now what's called CC, Creative Cloud. Occasionally, and especially throughout the semester, if you want to, you can update via your Creative Cloud application your version of Flash. They may or may not have new features. Generally speaking, it's not something that's drastic, but the idea is that these pieces of software are consistently being updated, that you're not necessarily sort of once a year or whatever getting a new version of it, but rather it's sort of a consistent piece of software. So what we're going to do again in this video is sort of find our way around this little program. First, we should talk about, and I sort of, as I'm saying it, I see the little Flash icon here sort of jumping around, advertising HTML5 in relation to Flash, which we're not necessarily going to get into. But this little animation down here, likely and hopefully for Flash's sake, done in Flash. Flash is an animation program. It makes things, generally speaking, on the internet move around, though there are other programs that can do similar things. We're going to use it for an animation program. We're going to make things move around. We're going to tell stories. We're going to do all sorts of things with this piece of software. Now, one thing to sort of differentiate between Flash and other pieces of software is this idea, and this is going to become important as we sort of get into making stuff in Flash, is the difference between what's considered vector graphics and raster graphics. This is a pretty keen and important differentiation between different types of graphic software. Something like Photoshop is what we'll call sort of pixel-based. I think we all know what a pixel is. A pixel is a square that contains a bit of information, generally a color, and then sort of information on what type of color that is. And it's based on sort of the putting together of tons and tons of pixels to make up something like a photograph. We've probably all zoomed in on a photograph, seen a pixel, understand what a pixel is. You put a bunch of them together, you get a picture. Okay, that's Photoshop. Flash is what is considered a vector-based program. The equivalent, for those of you who might have worked with something like Illustrator, which is another Adobe product, this is vector-based. Vector-based is very different. I always say that vector-based programs, and it's sort of how they are sort of created, are based on math. We always say that computers are quite good at math and can do math quickly and easily. Flash is based on this idea of vectors, meaning that we set information, meaning sort of a point A and a point B, and the computer sort of figures out the information in between. How far does that arc? What color is it? All sorts of information. These programs generally sort of run much quicker because they're not having to read every single pixel. Okay, they do a math equation and they sort of visually show us what we have, what we are sort of looking at. Okay, so let's get into Flash here. This is probably the screen you're going to see when you open Flash for the first time. Okay, and over here I have some Flash files that are sort of recent files. Generally speaking, we're going to look at this create new. We have sort of different things we can sort of create. Some of these are for mobile devices, things that happen on phones, little intros when you turn your cell phone on, or sometimes done in Flash, little animated things. We're generally speaking going to be creating an ActionScript 3.0 file. In sort of very layman terms, this is just a sort of typical Flash file. If you want to, you're welcome to, and there's a lot of resources over here, introductions, getting started, features, all sorts of tutorials, etc. I'm just going to create an ActionScript 3.0 file. Okay. Now, as I said before, we are going to do two exercises. They're going to be two separate videos, and this one's sort of getting to know this sort of layout. Okay, I'm going to generally be speaking, working in what's called the classic layout. You can look up here and see this little drop-down menu. You have animator, and when you hit those, you get these different ways of sort of seeing things. I'm going to be instructing in what's called classic. Okay, you'll see that there's different ways to sort of different workspaces is basically what these are called. I'm going to be working in the classic. Okay, over here, okay, you have your toolbox. Okay, most of you have probably worked in some graphic software and sort of recognize these things. I'm not going to necessarily go over each of these tools right now. They will sort of come in terms of instruction as sort of needed. I will point out a couple. The first one is right up here, and you'll notice, and I'm going to roll over this. When you roll over a tool in Flash, and generally speaking in any piece of Adobe software, it introduces itself. You get a little yellow window that says, "Hi, I'm the subselection tool. Hi, I'm the selection tool." This black arrow, so if you see in the step-by-steps, this is the selection tool. This is a very important tool for sort of moving things around. Okay, we have some drawing tools, we have some shape tools, we have some paint brushes, some pencils, some paint buckets. Again, these things I'll introduce as needed. One thing I want to sort of show you down here, which is to introduce more of a concept as much as anything. Down here you have two sort of boxes that might show a color. My one stroke color, what's called the stroke color, has this white box with a red line through it, and then my fill color actually has a color. Now, there's a very sort of important concept in relation to Flash and most vector-based programs is this idea of a stroke and fill color. When you draw an object, and I'm just going to quickly sort of draw an object, you'll see that as I draw that object, I get basically the fill color. Okay. If I were to choose, and I'm going to undo this, if I were to choose a color, let's choose a green there, and I draw that same shape, you'll see, maybe, I'll zoom in there, that now I have a stroke. A stroke is basically that outer edge, or that color that makes up that outer edge. This is sort of a tricky stroke and fill, is a tricky thing to sort of get used to if you've never worked with that. Okay, so when I talk about the stroke and fill, I'm talking about those colors. What color fills the object? What color strokes it? A lot of times, and the reason I had it, we sort of turned off the stroke and fill color, or sorry, turned off the stroke color so that we just draw a sort of solid shape. Okay, so again, just introducing some of these things. Up here at the top, you have two tabs. One is called Timeline, one is called Output. We're not going to get to the output till we get into a little bit of scripting. Your timeline. This is very, very important. Okay, we're going to be working on, as I said, little animated shorts, little short movies. Obviously, things happen over a period of time. These are what are called frames. These are where sort of things happen. Okay, in our next couple exercises, we're going to make very simple things happen, meaning we're going to sort of make an object move from point A to point B, and that's going to sort of come in handy, or the timeline is going to come in very handy in making that happen over a certain amount of time. Okay, just as an aside, Flash sort of moves through the timeline. This red sort of line right here is the playhead. If we had sort of animated elements in this timeline, it would sort of go across this and play those things accordingly. You can set the time that a Flash movie plays. For the most part, we are going to stick to, and it shows right down here, 24 frames per second. Okay, we'll get into some of these controls and what they mean a little bit later. Last but not least, in sort of getting to know our Flash, I'm going to click over here. These two windows, very, very important. The first one is called the library. The library is sort of the place where things that are objects, things that were moving around in our movie, that's where they live. Okay. We basically make master versions of things and put them in the library, and then put those onto the stage. Okay. Our stage is right here. Okay. So you'll see in the coming exercises we're going to make, I think, a green ball, a red ball. Those sort of what's called symbols live in the library and then are sort of popped down onto the stage here. Okay. The properties window will change depending on what you have on the stage, where you are in the timeline. Properties window is sort of where we denote things to happen in a certain way, how fast something moves. Does it rotate while it's moving? Does it change size when it's moving? That's where we're going to sort of deal with that. Okay. And as I mentioned here we have the stage. This is where sort of stuff happens. I'm zooming in and out. We can do that right here. You can go to 25% or 100%, whatever. You'll notice, and I'm going to zoom out here, that we have this gray area around here. This area is in play. If you've ever worked with something like Photoshop, if you have sort of a document, you don't really have this area off to the side where you can sort of set things. We often want things to sort of come in from the right-hand side and move left, so we actually want to start it sort of off stage. So this is an area we can sort of play with off to the side here. Okay, so in a nutshell, and again, this was sort of a brief introduction. This is Flash. I wanted to sort of get some of these basics out here before we sort of headed into the two exercises that we're going to do. So the first exercise we're going to do is what's called a motion tween, and the second exercise we're going to do is called a shape tween. So that's it for this Flash basics. You should move on to the second the second and third videos. Just as an aside, you'll see on D2L that for the most part I will post both step-by-step instructions on how to do something, as well as the video tutorials. There might be some exceptions to that as we move through the semester, but you will sort of see that on D2L as needed. Okay.